Hi friends, I just watched the Barbie movie. Actually, let me show you my poster that I got. I just decided on my own that I was gonna wear pink to watch the movie. And when I walked in, everyone was wearing pink and they were giving out all these beautiful posters. So we all were just wearing pink. It was this huge pink parade. They had a huge box where you could stand inside and pretend to be a Barbie. They also had a huge backdrop that you could take pictures in front of. Everyone was dressed up. Everyone from every age and every background was celebrating Barbie. And I thought, wow, this is not just a global phenomenon. This is a cultural phenomenon across cultures. My whole theater was laughing many times during this movie, just to tell you how funny it was. Both females and males were laughing. Everyone was just having a great time. In a scene where one of the Barbies came out of a trance, she said this hilarious line that let me know that the writers have just such a sensitive pulse on what it takes to be a man, or rather what it takes to be a woman experiencing a man, because she said, "Oh my goodness, why do I feel like I had to defend Zack Snyder's Justice League?" My whole audience erupted in laughter. I laughed so loudly because if you know Zack Snyder's Justice League and the whole issue behind it, there are people who defend that movie. I loved it, but there was like this huge camp of people that were warriors for it. And the fact that that was something that she felt when she became a man, or was like under the man trance, I don't want to spoil anything. It was just really interesting that they were able to pick up on something like that and include it in the script. Very funny. So many comments that were made that you're like, wow, I guess that's really what it's like to be a dude. And then some comments that the women made that you're like, I guess that's what it's like to be a dudette. I'd like to take a quick moment and thank everyone for their comments on the last video that I had posted. I really appreciate reading your guys' comments and hearing what you all have to say, so I'm really excited to see what you all have to say about this one. Please click the thumbs up if you like this video, because that's how I know that you like it, and subscribe now for more videos to come about movie reviews and movie reactions. There were moments throughout the entire fun of the movie that I was taken out because, one, the internal consistency of the movie was violated, and also they were woke and then had a sort of pseudo-woke editing. What I mean by that is, I'll take the intro for example. They talked about how there originally was the Barbie, the stereotypical Barbie, who is Margot Robbie, who does a fantastic job. We'll get into her performance in a little bit. When they had her showcased first, they said, but then they branched out and made other Barbies to represent all women. In their representation of all women, they tended to have the same body type of woman. They did have a disabled woman, and they did have a woman with a hijab on, but they didn't have a plus-size woman. They didn't have a bald woman. And so you're like, okay, and the reason why it stands out is because when they show stereotypical Barbie, I guess I'll just call her Barbie. It's hard because they all call each other Barbie, so for the sake of this review, when I talk about Margot Robbie, I'll talk about her as Barbie. When they talk about Barbie and they show Barbie and her friends, some of her friends are plus-sized, diversity, there's like a whole bunch of different kinds of Barbies around her, and you're like, oh cool, there's a pregnant Barbie, and you're like, oh fun. So they really did diversify, but in their lineup, they're like, hook for, oh, Mattel being so woke and progressive, they said that, oh, we had such a diverse Barbie line. But then when they show Mattel later on, Mattel isn't progressive or woke. So I'm very confused why Mattel would greenlight this movie and this script, because the script is very powerful and has a lot of wonderful philosophical things for us to discuss as a society. It's just, I felt, and I think a lot of people will feel, at the expense of Mattel, which you could say there's no such thing as bad publicity. But they kind of ragged on the fact that Mattel has only had 1 or 2 female CEOs, and they're like, that makes us really woke because we're the Barbie brand. We're all about girls and women run by men, but men who, like, we have mothers. So basically they were just like making fun of the fact that it's an entire male room representing a female brand. How does Mattel benefit off of this? Because they were kind of the villain throughout. This was another thing that just doesn't really make sense. Kate McKinnon is supposed to be weirdo Barbie, which is fine. I mean, they do apologize at the end to her, and they give her a very peculiar makeup design because the girl who takes care of her made her weird, which is fine. Love that. Love girls experimenting with their dolls. However, at the end of the movie, where it's supposed to be this huge moment for all the different characters, and like we talked about earlier, she comes back, weirdo Barbie, but her hair is different. Her hair is nice and kept. The makeup that she had earlier that was really zany, kind of like a Joker, Harley Quinn character, was washed off. And then the president looks at her and is like, I'm so sorry we called you Weird Barbie. And she's like, yeah. She's like, would you like to be a part of our cabinet? And she invites her in and welcomes her in. But what does it mean to say that she was excluded while she was weirdo Barbie and had the makeup and her hair was out of whack, but now she's being included and she just so happens to have her hair kept and the makeup washed off. Isn't the point that she's supposed to be welcomed and accepted as she is? So again, moments that you're like, what is the message here? It feels a little sloppy because you're like, couldn't she have just kept her regular design that you introduced us to? You cleaning her up and now she's involved with other Barbies says something. That communicates something. Everything is a choice. I mean, it's less so than animation. In animation, everything is a choice because you have to create everything. But in a film, things can sometimes happen and they just end up in the final product. But costuming and makeup, those are intentional choices, especially when you have a change. So she no longer looks the same. Why? Why are you changing how she looks? Are you trying to tell me that because she looked atypical, that she was a weirdo, but now that she looks typical, she is welcome? I don't like that. I don't like that. That's what you communicated by doing that, but I don't think that's what you meant, unless it is. But then why make this movie if it's not really about inclusiveness and inclusion? Talking about Barbie, Margot Robbie's performance, she did a fantastic job because most actors who are in a comedy have to play the comedy, and she did. And most actors who are in a drama play the drama, and she did. But she was in a movie that had her in a very particular challenging space because she had to play drama while other people played comedy. Because she's sort of a Barbie having an existential crisis while everyone else is having fun and being lighthearted. So to her, you really have to be, as an actor, in your internal space so locked in that while other people are laughing and like saying jokes to your face, you can still fully shed tears. She sold every single scene she was in. And she really was Barbie. I didn't see her as Margot Robbie. I saw her as Barbie just experiencing our world, and her comments about what we go through and how heinous and corrupt, greedy, misogynistic, patriarchal our society is and can be and doesn't have to be was really palpable, and they did a wonderful job communicating that and fleshing that part out. I found that Ryan Gosling's acting also stole the screen, stole the show. I don't even know. He had such a pulse on what it is to be the kind of, not loser boyfriend, but there's so much to talk about. I've had friends in my life who, when I see them introduce themselves to other people, they say, oh, I'm so-and-so's girlfriend. And I find that language so interesting. My older brother would introduce me as, oh, this is my younger brother, Peter. So no one would hear Peter. They would just hear, oh, younger brother. People actually called me younger brother. I'm not salty about it. I'm just traumatized. Ken identified himself as, I'm Barbie's boyfriend, Ken. That's how he saw himself. So he was groveling at her feet. He wanted to be with her, which was so charming, so admirable, such a sweet thing. But Barbie doesn't have feelings for him that way. So it made him feel left out, made him want to find a solution. And the solution he found was, in the real world, to be a patriarchal society and just tell women what to do and make women subservient to him, which made him sort of a pseudo-villain. And I thought that they really explored that really well. I wondered how they were going to be able to recover from it because he got pretty intense as Ken and things got really spicy between him and Barbie. But where the movie really floundered is not just the internal consistency and some of these pseudo-woke elements, but Act 3 was really sloppy. And I don't even want to use the word sloppy because they were so intentional throughout the whole movie. I guess I just don't get Act 3. I would love to hear what you all think about Act 3. I found it bizarre. This is spoiler territory, so if you don't want to hear it, then come back when you have watched the movie. When in Act 3, Ken apologizes and Barbie apologizes and they're having this makeup moment, he still wants to get with Barbie in a relationship, and she's like, I don't feel for you that way. And so he's like, oh, woe is me, I can't exist without you, which is kind of true because he's created as Barbie's partner. So Barbie's like, no, you have to find yourself. And he has this line, which I don't understand why it was triumphant and victorious to land on, because it almost felt as though he had already had that revelation earlier in the movie where he says, Ken is me. And she's like, that's right, Ken. Ken is me. I don't even know what that means. What does it mean, Ken is me? Ken, you could individualize the character of Ken? Maybe that's what it means. If that's what it means, I can kind of see that, but they should have really fleshed that out. With a script that had such a pulse on what the audience is gonna laugh at, they really need to flesh some things out. And maybe that's not what they meant, but that's, I guess, what they mean, Ken is me. From that quote onward in the movie, I thought it did not stick the landing. They had like transported all these human characters, the Mattel employees, Will Ferrell, who's the Mattel CEO, who did a fantastic job. It was very funny. He's like simultaneously flamboyant and playing the male character. And they bring all those people to the Barbie world, and they're gone for like 25 minutes. And you think, are they the villains, or what? How are they going to come back? And they come back, 25 of them, and they just like have a conversation with Barbie. In talking about it, I'm kind of still synthesizing. I suppose that the purpose of that was to show how they sort of were all yes men to him. So for him to be like, let's go to Barbie World, and all 25 of them, like, yeah, boss, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. I guess that's the funny thing, that he didn't need all of them. But the conversation he had with Barbie was, oh, yay, you know, we need to get Barbie back on the shelf. And then the mom character is like, why don't we just have a normal Barbie? And he's like, that's a stupid idea. And they say, well, it's gonna make money. He said, that's a great idea. And I thought, okay, Mattel, you're telling us you're all about money? But from that point forward, they then had like an act 3C, where they introduced a character who was there prior, who's supposed to be the creator of Barbie, who takes her on a walk in a clearly studio space, which was beautiful. They had like these wonderful lights, and they had this moment where they said, Barbie, you can choose. Do you want to stay in Barbie Land, or do you want to be a human? And she said, well, I think I want to be a human, which already is mind-blowing after experiencing the human world and knowing that it's wild and not what she wants. But I think it's coming from a place of altruism where she wants to help out, which is fine. Except then the creator said, well, Barbie, I can't let you make this decision until you know what it's like. So give me your hands. And she gave her her hands. And they had this foreshadowing montage of what it's like to be a woman in the real world, from young age until elderly. However, they had like white girls and they had black girls, but I thought, if you're really trying to cater to a global audience, where are the Asian girls? Where are the Middle Eastern girls? Where are all the Hispanic girls? If you're trying to cater to all women, where are the different kinds of women? Where are the women who are in hospitals? Where are the women who are soldiers? The montage was pool parties and riding a bike, and I'm like, this is very suburbia kind of womanhood, except the purpose of the whole, this is again the pseudo-wokeness of this movie, or it feels pseudo-woke. Maybe I'll come up with something right now, and if you have something else, please tell me, because the whole movie was like, being a woman in the real world is not great. So why in her warning sign to Barbie saying, hey, let me show you what it's actually gonna be like, does she see only positive things? It made me tear up, and it made a lot of people tear up. You could hear a lot of people sniffle, because it's like, our world does have beauty in it. I was waiting for certain people to show up on screen. I was waiting for a bald Barbie to show up on screen, or a bald woman just to be featured. None of it. None of it. It was just very suburbia, grocery shopping, in your car, riding a bike, pool party mom kind of foreshadowing, and I thought, this is not all that it is. They said from birth until death, life is hard, but they don't even show like the death part. They don't show Barbie what it's like to go to a funeral. In that foreshadowing, it's just all cheerful, which makes you cry in a movie that was about the difficulty of being a human. So I guess that's why they're like, oh, but it's actually beautiful. Think about the beauty in your life. It's just, they should have shown some of the harder things too, because if they showed those harder things, you can then internalize that those harder things are still beautiful because we're alive. That's what it means to be different than a doll, that we are living and we are finite, so we need to be grateful for the time that we have, versus Barbie's an idea and she lives on forever. And it would have been more powerful, I think, if she stayed in the Barbie world, because then she can say, I want to live on, helping people from here, being there for all these women and all these girls throughout their timelines, because then I can live on. But she chooses to go to the real world, which means Barbie's gonna die. Only, I think they really did it so that they could have a joke where the final button of the movie, she's like, oh, I'm here for she shows up to a building and they're like, oh, what are you here for? And she's like, I'd like to see my gynecologist. And it cuts like that, and I was like, wait, what? You really brought her to the real world and you want her to see a gynecologist? Like, they already made a joke that she doesn't have genitals, a vagina, that Ken doesn't have a penis, but they really wanted to stick that in the movie, and I don't think you needed Barbie to come to the human world in order to experience that, or to have that button. You could have had her say, well, maybe I'll stay, but there is one thing I'd like to do. And they say, sure, what is it? And then it shows her in that scene, because you still get the joke, and it shows that Barbie really has a comedic spirit about her. Spirit. She has a spirit about her. One other thing that I found that was bizarre about Barbie is that she calls herself the stereotypical Barbie. They had some moments here that were not just pseudo-woke, they were super woke, which I appreciated. because amongst all the diverse Barbies, she is the stereotypical Barbie, and at one point, one of the characters calls her the white savior Barbie. And I was glad. I thought, okay, at least they're acknowledging that the movie, which is promoting diversity and representation, still has their main character, a white woman and a white man. I think they should have changed the script ever so slightly and had this happen. When they asked her what it is that you want, because the moment that I did not like it was when the Kens had asked the president of Barbie Land, hey, can we have a spot on the council, on the Supreme Court of Barbie Land to have representation? And she says, no, you can have maybe a small little chair, like some representative position, but not on the Supreme Court. And they're like, oh boy, great. And it's supposed to be funny, not in Act 3. Not in Act 3 when we've resolved and people are now coming together and it's supposed to be the message of the movie, because the narrator comes on and says, one day, the Kens in Barbie Land will have as much power as women do in the real world. And then that feels like such a gut punch. And I think that it's intentional. I mean, it is. It's in the script. But hear me out. What if it were like this? What if President Barbie says, no, you'll have a small little cabinet seat? And they're like, oh boy. And the narrator says, one day, the Kens will have as much power in Barbie Land as women do in the real world. And then Margot Barbie, who's been the Barbie that's been experiencing everything, says no. And then people kind of like part ways and it just shows her in her beautiful sun yellow dress. And she says, we need to be different. We need to change. It's not about how we've been treated. It's about how we treat others. And we need to be inclusive and compassionate. And it's time that we all put our best foot forward. And then as people are thinking and thinking, this happens on screen. This happens on screen. What? Goes on her tippy toes. That would have been so much more powerful. That it's not about just poking fun and saying, well, women don't have power. It's stop being vengeful. Be kind. Be the change you want to see. And that would have given her such a powerful story arc. She's not stereotypical Barbie. She's change Barbie. And that harkens back to a theme in the movie where the mom and the daughter talked about how as a daughter, you grow up and you change. You don't want to play with Barbie anymore. But now as a mom, things change on her so much that she likes the consistency of having a Barbie, that it's the memories that hold on. And Margot Barbie struggles the whole movie with this concept of change. She's like, I don't like your world. Everything is just convoluted and complex. And she said, honey, that's what it's like to be alive. Change is constant. And she starts crying and she has her whole existential crisis and is on face on the floor. That would have been so much more powerful, because I think at that point, you've split your audience. You've said, men, you're evil, which a lot of people, to be fair, have made this world really corrupt. But to really not just down or double down or triple down, that's like quintuple down on the men being jerks and doofuses. You don't give them a redeeming arc. You don't give them a seat. You tell them that they're not going to have as much power. Like, you're basically encouraging people in the real world to say, well, if women were the ones who brought this movie together are saying that they would mistreat us if they had the power, then why would we ever change this world? There were so many snips and comments of men in the real world in the movie who were making jabs at women and how they're not really diverse workplaces, that they don't really care about the woman's point of view, silencing women. It's just a lot of things that were really heinous made me so uncomfortable, especially because Ken, who's a man, was able to so quickly pick up on how he could be treated like royalty. And he wanted that. And the Barbies want it too. It's showing that no one is different. So that's why it feels like this fake wokeness, because Barbies aren't any different than the men are in the real world, who they're vilifying. So the Barbies are villains too. So I don't understand what they want us to come away with. Is Mattel telling us that Barbie's gonna die because now she's in the real world? Are they telling us that Barbies are evil just like the corrupt men are in the real world? Are they telling us? I'm so confused by what I'm supposed to take away from this movie. Aside from the slice of life, the snapshot experience that women have been mistreated and that needs to change. But given the opportunity, women won't let men in. Because Barbie apologizes to Ken and said, maybe not every night needs to be women's night. And he's like, yeah, I really felt left out, Barbie. And she's like, I'm sorry. Not every night needs to be girls' night. And he's like, yeah. And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was so beautiful. That's the coming together that we need, the inclusiveness. But then they like throw Ken under the bus. They don't give any of the Kens redeeming arcs. And they have this pseudo moment, these pseudo woke moments at the end. They end with the gynecologist. And you're like, she comes to the real world and commits to this life here after seeing what it's like, and knowing that she actually did help people through all of it, and them saying that they're gonna make a new normal Barbie, are they actually gonna do it? Like, what Barbie is out right now? I want to Google it and see, did they make a Barbie specifically for this movie? I kind of want them to make the mom Barbie, which is a Barbie that is the mom from this movie. I thought she was really sweet. One of the motivations to get herself fixed is she wants to be able to go on her tiptoes again. She doesn't want to have cellulite, and she doesn't want to, you know, get ugly. And not that they ever use the word ugly. I think intentionally so. They never used it. She just said, I'm not pretty, I'm not beautiful. But then they're like, you are beautiful. You are so pretty. And I thought, why are we trying to act like we're woke, yet we're continuing to uplift each other with beauty standards and saying you're beautiful, you're pretty, look at you. It should be, look at what you've done, look at who you are. You're beautiful. You know, she just sits there and looks at this elderly woman. She doesn't know anything about her. And she's just like, you're beautiful. And I think it's supposed to be like, maybe the messaging could have really been, oh, this would have been wonderful if the messaging could have talked about how beauty is an inner quality. Some highlights about this movie were Margot Robbie's acting, Ryan Gosling's acting, the hilarious interactions between the Kens and the Barbies. The fact that the Kens all played guitar for their Barbies, that scene was so funny. I laughed for like 28 seconds straight. I just couldn't catch my breath. That was such a perfectly put together scene because they zoom out and you see all the Kens. Like, there's no diversity in how a guy hangs out with a girl. It's just, which again is putting guys in a very dark light, but it was comedy. You could laugh at it if you give them some redemption, but you don't. So it feels like all those were intentional blows, which is kind of rough. And I'm not a huge fan of it because it's basically saying, guys, you suck. It's funny. I was laughing the whole movie up until the third act, and they didn't redeem the Kens, and the Barbies remained as rude and power hungry as the villains of the real world were, who were the men. So they were equally as vilified. Set designs. I think by far and away, one of the greatest elements of this movie were the costume designs, the set designs. Just really, everything was practical effects, not really much CGI. You felt like you could reach out and touch everything, which really does so much. It does so much to elevate the movie because it makes everything feel tangible. I thought the child actress was really good. The daughter who plays Sasha, she's gonna get picked up by someone. If she doesn't, she needs to. She's fire. I thought the mom did a good job. The mom was really sympathetic, and she played the tired mom very well. The tired, loving mom. And the moments where it showed her and her daughter distancing a little bit were heartbreaking, and I felt bad for her, and she played the mom part really well. When she had this monologue speech with Barbie to kind of be the climax of the film, I'm glad they gave it to her because Margot Barbie got to play a more listener in that moment. And she talked about how hard it is to be a woman, how contradictory it is. You have to be pretty, but not too pretty to distract a man, and not too pretty to tempt a man, but not too ugly that the men won't look at you, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And I thought that was really well written. I felt that she could have been more into it. She could have dug deeper. She got really good and she stood up and she just starts walking around, but after a while it felt like just punch, 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 punch without real ebbs and flows in her acting. It was still very well written, so you take a lot away from it. They did have some moments in the script that were, again, poignant, where they talked about white savior. At one point, Barbie's walking up the stairs when she first loses her heels, and she says, oh my goodness, if my feet were shaped like this, I'd never wear heels. Ding dong, and that's it. She just says that one line and we're into the next scene. Again, these poignant laser lines that they added to the script means that they really do have a pulse on what it means to have social commentary, political commentary, and comedy. But to have had the ending that they had, I really missed it, or it wasn't clear enough, or they really intended to split the sexes at the end. I thought it was pretty creative that the dollhouse doesn't have stairs, it doesn't have water, it doesn't have a mirror. Those are really ingenious touches that let you know that a human was behind the creative decisions and not AI. Like ChatGPT can't really, I mean, at least not yet, come up with cool ideas like that. I liked Billie Eilish's song, What You Made Me For, I think is what it's called. Very, very beautiful, very touching, and it comes at a great place in the movie. I did not really like some of the other songs. I think Nicki Minaj also has a song here. They did have some curses, like let's talk about it from a pediatrician point of view right now. They did have some curses in the movie. I didn't think it was warranted. They did have some elements of just like alcohol and just, you don't need it, but it was to show like the broiness of it. It's fine. It is a PG-13 movie, so of course take your teenagers to see it. I think it's safe for teenagers. Younger kids, because it's Barbie, they might not understand the curses, but I think they also had like the B word at the end in Nicki Minaj's song, which I don't know that you necessarily need it. I think this movie's gonna have very long legs. Get it? Because it's Barbie. I would rate it on a scale of 1 through 10. Decimals are encouraged. A 9.0. Thank you all so much for watching. I would love to hear what you have to say about the movie after you watch it, and please share this with other people who might be interested in hearing this review about Barbie.